Adoption is one of the most selfless acts a person or a family can undertake. It provides children with the opportunity to thrive in a permanent, loving home, often completing a family, as I have seen for myself in my role as a proud auntie. Yet, despite the immeasurable value adoption offers to these children, to their new families and society, financial barriers prevent many prospective adopters from stepping forward. And today, I wish to highlight the case of Kirsty. Kirsty is a constituent of mine from Marple, and her case exposes a significant gap in the financial support system that discourages self-employed individuals from adoption. Kirsty is a self-employed mother who dreamed of expanding her family, and after a year of trying to conceive a second child, she and her husband decided to explore adoption. Their first son, Charlie, a bright-eyed 4-year-old with an unshakable love for trains, often talked about how much he wanted a little sibling to be his assistant train driver. And for Kirsty and her family, opening their hearts and their home to a child via adoption was the best option. But just as Kirsty began to embrace this vision for her family's future, a close friend, also self-employed and in the process of adopting, she informed her that she was not entitled to the same financial support through statutory adoption pay, throwing her plans into doubt ever since. Now, unlike biological parents who qualify for maternity allowance or employed adopters who are eligible for statutory adoption pay, self-employed adopters like Kirsty fall into a financial support void. While statutory guidance allows local authorities to make discretionary means-tested payments equivalent to these allowances, such support is not guaranteed, and local authorities have no legal duty to provide it. And in fact, a Freedom of Information request by the charity Home for Good revealed that 34% of local authorities lack any policy for providing this financial support. And even worse, 90% of self-employed adopters surveyed by the APPG on adoption and permanence in 2022 reported that their social worker never advised them about these discretionary payments and the possibility of receiving them. Many of those in Kirsty's situation cannot take the financial risk of adopting a child without assured support. She is not alone. This gap creates a stark disparity between those who are employed and self-employed, a barrier for many who might otherwise give a child a stable and loving home. The consequences of this lack of support are far-reaching. Having often faced abuse or neglect, adopted children need time and care to settle into their new families. As a result, adoptive parents are often advised to take up to a year off work to ensure proper bonding and support. So where does this leave those who are self-employed? Without financial support, they face impossible choices, continuing to work and sacrificing the vital time they need to build a relationship with their child, sacrificing their careers and their financial stability, or abandoning their adoption plans altogether. And for many, the only realistic option is the latter. The government of different shades has often recognised the importance of building a relationship with an adopted child, but for too long has insisted that self-employed adopters should have to rely on unreliable discretionary payments. And in November, I asked the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions to extend statutory adoption pay to the self-employed, or to introduce an equivalent benefit. And while the Minister's response expressed support for adoptive parents, yet again it pointed to a flawed system of discretionary payments. In December, I called on the government to allocate time to debate how we can get and support people like Kirsty, and do that in government time, sadly so far to no avail. And just before Christmas, I submitted an amendment to the Employment Rights Bill, New Clause 46, which would allow the self-employed to claim statutory adoption pay. Last week, in a letter to me, the Minister committed, not this Minister, a different Minister, committed again to reviewing the parental leave system, agreeing that improvements needed to be made. And as this review begins, I must urge departments across government to prioritise financial support for self-employed adopters. The financial case for supporting adoptive parents is compelling. Research by the Consortium of Voluntary Adoption Agencies UK shows that in 2021, adoption saved the UK economy £4.2 billion through improvements in children's health and education and employment prospects compared to the outcomes for children that remained in care or other placements. Local councils saved £3.6 billion, while the NHS and wider economy benefited by £341 million and £34 million, respectively. The CVAA has also found that at least £1.3 million worth of value is created when a child is adopted, underscoring the societal and economic benefits of increasing adoption numbers. Yet the number of adoptions has halved since a peak in 2015, even as the number of looked-after children has risen by 25%. Removing financial barriers and empowering those who are self-employed through guaranteed financial support to step forward for adoption could reverse this troubling trend. The case for further financial support for adoptive parents in addressing the distinct challenges they face is equally compelling. Rates of depression and anxiety rise to as high as 32% among those who adopt. Unlike biological parents, adoptive parents often have to contend with navigating their child's complex trauma, attachment issues, and a long and arduous adoption process. These challenges can be compounded by the grief and loss many adoptive parents can feel if they have experienced infertility or failed attempts to conceive. Adoption can also place strain on relationships, and while divorce rates among adoptive parents are not disproportionate, the difficulties of parenting children with complex needs, alongside the emotional toll of the adoption process, can push couples to their limits. Financial instability worsens these challenges, threatening the family cohesion of those brave and selfless enough to adopt. And finally, the adoption process in the UK is long and complex, sometimes taking years from the initial application to the final court approval. Prospective parents are subject to background checks, references, intense assessment and adoption panel scrutiny before they are even able to find a match. This journey, though of course it's necessary to ensure the best outcomes for children, the journey places immense stress on prospective adopters. So I urge the Minister and the various departments involved in this work to explore ways to provide financial support that acknowledges and mitigates these unique pressures placed on adoptive parents, self-employed or otherwise. And I hope that this will play a significant part in the upcoming review into parental leave. Adoptive parents deserve robust financial support, and addressing this issue is not only a matter of fairness, but also a means of unlocking the full potential of adoption. Ministers across government and the various departments involved have the opportunity to lead the way by extending statutory adoption pay to self-employed adopters or implementing an equivalent benefit. We should not allow financial barriers to stand in the way of creating loving families and providing children with the stability they so desperately need and undoubtedly deserve. The government could and should act decisively, ensuring that adoption remains a viable and supported choice for all prospective parents. Thank you.